Good evening and welcome to the City Council's July 12th regular City Council meeting. This is a hybrid meeting with City Council, city staff, and members of the public participating in City Council chambers in accordance with public health guidelines for in-person meetings and participating remotely to promote social distancing in this federal, state, and local emergency. Mayor Nash is absent this evening. I am Vice Mayor Jen Wallison. I would like to introduce City Council members and staff present. City Council members Drew Combs, Ray Mueller, and Cecilia Taylor. Staff present include Interim City Manager Justin Murphy, City Attorney Neera Doherty, and City Clerk Judy Heron. City Clerk Heron, would you please provide instructions to the City Council and members of the public on how the meeting will proceed?
Yes, thank you, Vice Mayor. So at this time, if any member of the public wishes to speak on an item after the Vice Mayor calls for public comment on that item, I'll ask for any virtual attendees to engage that hand feature in the bottom of their screen. You can also press *9 if calling in from a landline or a cell phone. For any members of the public in person, after I call for public comment on your item, we'll ask that you come up to the podium and we can call on you at that time. That concludes my introductions. Thank you.
Thank you, City Clerk Heron. Agenda review. Agenda review provides advance notice to members of the public and city staff of any modifications to the agenda order and any requests from City Council members under City Council member reports. Does the City Council wish to pull or modify any agenda items? I'm going to be pulling consent calendar item F2 related to the quiet zone. We are now moving on to public comment. Under public comment, the public may address the City Council on any subject not listed on the agenda. Each speaker may address the City Council once under public comment for a limit of 3 minutes. Please clearly state your name and address or political jurisdiction in which you live. The City Council cannot act on items not listed on the agenda, and therefore the City Council cannot respond to non-agenda issues brought up under public comment other than to provide general information. I will call for public comment at the appropriate times for members of the public to address the City Council on any item under agenda sections. Those include study session, consent calendar, regular business, and informational items. City Clerk Heron, please call for general public comment.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. So at this time, if any member of the public wishes to provide comment for an item not on tonight's agenda, I ask that you engage that hand feature in the bottom of your screen or press *9 if calling in from a landline or a cell phone. For any members of the public who are with us in person, I ask that you step up to the podium now. And our first speaker will be in person, and I'll ask that you state your name before you start your comment. Thank you.
My name is Tom Mcrae. I'm the coach of Solo Aquatics. I've been the coach of Solo Aquatics since I joined Solo in 1990. So it's been a while that I've been with Solo. I was kind of stunned at the last council meeting because Solo very much has actually bid on the only RFP that was presented. That was in 2010. I was part of, our program was part of passing Measure T, supporting that. And then when the facility was open, we supported Tim Sheeper taking that over. And that was based off of a zero cost to the city. Based off of that, Solo had, based during the time that the building was underway, Solo had a contract with Menlo Atherton. And so the lap swimmers of Menlo Park were allowed to go ahead and continue their lap swim during that time. Solo paid that bill, and then we're able to take those hours when the new pool opened. After we supported Tim Sheeper, we went round and around. Part of the exhibit that I was asked to review was the fact that Solo was supposed to get access to the instructional pool and the lap pool. Solo has never been able to get access to the instructional pool. We do have access to the lap pool. And in all this time, Solo's space with this new facility is equal to the same space that we had, the same amount of lane, same lane hours that we had prior to the construction. Solo is very much in favor of a continuation of by Mr. Sheeper for the 1-year extension, But if that doesn't happen, that's not a problem. Solo is 100% ready to step up and take over the reins. And just so you know, Solo used to use that Burgess pool, and we also used other pools because we didn't have the amount of space. One of our pools broke at Woodside Priory, and then we moved to MA within a week and operated all the facilities for 12 years. So very capable of doing that. And our program grew to over 500 people. After the RFP process, the school raised our rates after we offered to pay $20,000 a month, which is the interest on the loan. The school raised our rates, and so it's just a matter of time before we lost that facility. So right now we're operating with 130 swimmers and 4 lanes at Burgess. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for your comment. Our next speaker will be Mike Schrader.
Vice Mayor, council members, thank you for having me. I'm a member of Warm Water Wellness. You received a letter from our secretary over the last week discussing the Nicholson indoor pool, which is a warm water therapy pool, not like any recreational pool in the county. We're trying to get it reopened. Sutter's closed it for 2 years and is causing a great amount of physical grief. I myself, having lost that facility, have been bedridden for 2 years now, waiting for some sort of reopening. We specifically are not contacting you about the pools you have. You have a great amount of aquatic facilities, but they're all outdoors. They're not really reasonable to heat to the level of 92 degrees for what we need, but we are asking for your help to join virtually every other city in the peninsula, in the San Mateo area. There's written resolutions to Sutter Health asking them to consider reopening the pool. The Peninsula Healthcare District offered to provide temporary funding of all costs for repair, remodeling, and running the Nicholson therapy pool in the interim until a new pool can be opened and available to the many hundreds of former users that have been shut out for the last 2 years. That may occur in Burlingame, that may occur in South San Francisco, it may occur elsewhere. Again, we're not looking for it from you, but we are asking for your help to support us and create a resolution. We attached to the letter we sent you a sample of the San Mateo County Board of Supervisors resolution. We also included our white paper on the need for therapeutic resources on the peninsula that describes the situation in more depth. We have a warmwaterwellness.org website that does so. And there's a lot of people that have had agonizing problems that have only been resolved. And when Sutter chose to close for no substantiated reasons and would not meet with us, even after Peninsula Healthcare District offered to fully fund an interim restart of the pool. The pool has not been demolished. It's there. It's empty. It needs to be restarted. We need the help and support of everyone. We've had support from Assemblyman Mullen and State Senator Becker on down to various districts, and we really would appreciate your support. We understand that you can't act on this just from me asking tonight, but we'd like you to consider introducing a resolution and joining the rest of the cities who look forward towards their aging populations. Currently, the population age 65 in the Peninsula area will increase 148% between now and 2030. And that representation of aging in place and baby boomers, whatever, 1 in 4 will have a disability of some kind, many of which will benefit from or need the type of care available only from a warmer heated therapy type pool. And we ask that you give us the support you can, consider writing a resolution and join with us in standing to let Sutter know that they can't keep closing programs. They've closed 22 quality of life programs in the last 15 years. And we're trying to get that reversed and we need your help. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Our next speaker will be Adina Levin, and this will be the final call for general public comment for items not on tonight's agenda.
Good evening, Vice Mayor and council members. Adina Levin, Menlo Park resident. And I wanted to report on one of the elements of the discussion at last night's planning commission meeting, where there is a item that is a potential good transportation amenity for the city and a potential opportunity to have the city help make that happen. So the Sobrato office building that the Planning Commission was reviewing is on the bayside of the Dumbarton Rail Corridor. And in that area, of course, is our other homes, housing developments being built, a school, and some other services. And then on the other side of the rail is Kelly Park and the Bellhaven Menlo Park Community Center that is being rebuilt, as well as the residents of the Bellhaven neighborhood. And as part of this development, the Sobrato organization looked into potentially doing a bike ped undercrossing of the Dumbarton tracks, and worked on this for a while, but ran into some roadblocks where they had some issues with where Samtrans referred to Caltrains. They're using Caltrains rail standards. But apparently there was a missed connection because Caltrain is currently updating their rail standards that pertain to grade separations that can also include bike ped underpasses in ways that could benefit a wide range of grade separation projects. And so while they got a roadblock from Samtrans's real estate department, Caltrain's rail people updating the standards are willing to take a look and see if there might be some more options for a practical project. And if this is at all feasible, this is something that the planning commissioners were really interested in pursuing in their comments on the project last night. And this is also something that has been listed in the proposed amenities for the subcommittee that was working on the Bayfront amenities. So I do hope that this is something where the city and the developer and the agencies can work together to come up with some potential solution to make that connection happen for people in the current neighborhood and new neighborhoods to better connect Menlo Park. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you for your comment. And our final speaker will be Adrian Bredan.
Yes, thank you. Good evening. My comment pertains to your consent agenda item approving the study for quiet zones, train horn quiet zones with Kimley Horn.
Okay,
I just want
I'll have you pause just one moment. When we get to the consent calendar, we can pull that item for public comment at that time.
Okay, apologies. I'll wait.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, seeing no further hands for general public comment for items not on the agenda. Vice Mayor, you may continue.
Thank you, City Clerk Karen. And I wanted to thank Mr. Mcrae, Mr. Schrader, and Ms. Levin for their comments. As stated earlier, we can't respond to them now, but please be assured that we have heard them and they'll be under consideration. We're moving on to our study session. Study sessions are an opportunity for city staff to introduce an item that will require policy direction from the City Council in the near future. City staff will provide a brief presentation. I will then call for public comment. After public comment, the City Council will discuss the matter interactively with staff. The City Council will not take an action on items addressed in study sessions. The City Council may provide direction to city staff for preparation of additional analysis or information necessary when the item returns to the City Council for action. The study session item is E1. Provide direction on landscaping at the Willow Road and US 101 interchange. To introduce Assistant Public Works Director Hugh Louch. Hi, Mr. Louch.
And Hugh, if I can just interrupt you one moment and ask for Marie to engage her hand feature. Unfortunately, I'm not seeing the name pop up. Perfect. I'll promote you now. Thank you.
Judy. Thank you, Vice Mayor and members of council. I will start a screen share here. And if we get confirmation that you all can see my screen.
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today about the Willow 101 landscaping phase of this project, which has of course been going on for quite some time and well before my tenure here. I will give some introductory remarks and talk about the status of the project, and then Marie from Calendar and Associates will walk through some of the details of the concept design that we're currently asking you to provide feedback on. So today's request is a study session where we're looking for direction from council on a handful of items related to the landscaping phase for this project. And hoping to use that to then launch into the design phase of the project and then eventually installation of the landscaping itself. So a little bit about the status of the project. In 2019, the actual construction of the interchange infrastructure itself was completed. And then since that time, over the last, next couple of years, the interchange was used as part of building out the 101 express lanes in San Mateo County, which opened fairly recently and was used for a variety of purposes for that. And that is now completed. There's no more use of the interchange for that project. And so it is available to do the landscaping. And during that time when we were conducting, while that construction was going on, the city was leading the landscaping phase of the project. And that included both the kind of development of concepts as well as outreach efforts. So in fall of 2019, we did have a community meeting to review a number of design options. And then that led to an Environmental Quality Commission meeting in December of 2019 that led to a recommended preferred enhanced design, which had a forest-like concept and a total cost of about 5.6 million. And we used that then to apply for an urban greening grant for about 80% roughly of that cost. And unfortunately, we're notified late in 2021 that we were not successful with that grant. And the overall budget that we do have from funding for the project, which mostly has come from the San Mateo County Transportation Authority, is about 1.6 million. And so what we started to do this year is start to reconsider the standard landscaping plan for the project that would fit within or close to within the available budget that we have for the project. Just want to say a few words about the project limits itself. So the shaded green area are the areas that are generally to be considered for landscaping. You'll also see that there's a dashed red line that separates the areas of the interchange that are within the city of Menlo Park and that are within the city of East Palo Alto. And actually a large portion of the interchange is within the city of East Palo Alto. And then there are a couple of areas that lay outside of Caltrans right of way altogether. So one of those is the area adjacent to Bay Road, where the movement of the ramps had led to an extension of a sound wall and some other changes there. And there's proposed screening in that area. And then on the sort of upper part of the diagram here, there's a portion of the area outside of Willow Road, the part of Willow Road that's not the highway part, but more like the frontage road there, that is also in East Palo Alto, but it's city-owned land. And so that also has a couple options. And when the concept phase was going on, the proposal there was to build a little pocket park for that area. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. And then before I pass it over to Marie to talk a little bit more about some of the concepts and where we're at with those, I did just want to acknowledge we have seen and heard quite a few comments. We know that there's a lot of interest in this. We know that the sort of long-term nature of the development of the interchange has led to a long period of time when there is very little landscaping currently on the interchange itself, and that has a variety of impacts on folks. And just some of the things that we have heard relate to, the types of plantings, and in particular, the types of trees that are proposed. We've heard quite a number of folks asking for native plants there as well. And there have also been some requests for us to look at extending that screening on Bay Road further down Van Buren. That it basically stops right at the intersection of Bay Road and Van Buren, but the bare sound wall continues down that road a little bit. And I believe there may be some others, and we may hear from folks tonight, but did just want to acknowledge those and let you know that we'll try to address a few of those as we go through the presentation.
Yeah, so just to start, I wanted to point out a few of the key constraints that influence the proposed design. Hugh had mentioned one of the opportunities, which was the mini park on the East Palo Alto side. So one constraint are that we have areas that receive soil stabilization treatment during the construction of the interchange. And so that resulted in a soil mix that doesn't really support tree growth. And so these areas are shown in orange. And then other areas where trees cannot be planted are shown by the mint green color. And these are areas within a defined distance from the roadway, and they need to be clear physical structures such as tree trunks in order to meet vehicle safety requirements. And this setback is shown in the red dashed lines. So when you subtract out the orange and the mint green colored areas, what remains are the dark green, which can support both trees and shrubs and ground covers. Let's go ahead and advance the slide. So when we presented the site opportunities, constraints, and some of the initial design options to the community, two priorities really rose to the top. One was, let's replace the trees that were removed. Let's maximize the quantity of trees that we put back. And then also let's make sure that we're being very sustainable and meeting environmental sustainability goals. So meeting attendees expressed a strong preference for redwood trees. They were one of the species that had been there on site before the construction of the interchange. So strong preference for basically trying to put back what was removed. But acknowledging that there are some negatives to using redwoods, just very high water use and understanding the changes in climate and whatnot. Upon further discussion, we have presented this slide, which includes some alternatives to redwood trees that allow for getting a similar form but using less water, and then also a little bit easier to maintain. The community was open to considering some of these alternatives. The community did want a landscape that is sustainable, and so that includes a range of related goals from maximizing carbon sequestration to stormwater treatment to using climate adaptive California natives. We also heard that landscaping should provide a physical screen to reduce light and noise from the overpass, as well as a screen for views to and from the homes from the overpass. And so, that's one of the reasons why I think the redwood trees were so strongly supported, because they have that tall, conical form that would provide for this screen, this screening function. And it's also one of the reasons why we felt it was important to look at redwood tree alternatives, so that we can provide a mix of tree species that can provide the screening effect. So taking these priorities into account, the plant palette that we're proposing would consist predominantly of California natives. So things like coast live oak, incense cedar, California buckeye, and then also California native shrubs, coyote brush, sagebrush, among quite a few others. And so these, we do propose to supplement these with a few non-native species where we felt kind of better native species were unavailable, just very limited. And so this does include Atlas cedar and deodar cedars, as shown in this slide. Again, it's to provide the community with a tall, evergreen, conical, drought-tolerant landscape screen that they had wanted. And then also we are proposing a creeping fig, which is an ornamental species, vine species, and that would provide an evergreen cover for the sound wall and fencing along Bay Road. So, we heard kind of loud and clear the community's preferences for California natives. We understand that non-native plants are not preferred by the community, but we do feel that in these two specific instances, they provide a really important screening function, and in terms of kind of total quantity of the palette would constitute a very small minority of proposed plants. So we thought in whole, it was a good compromise. Next slide. And so this next exhibit shows the proposed locations of trees and irrigated shrub areas. And again, the highway interchange is within Caltrans right of way. It will be maintained by them, and so it does need to meet their design and maintenance requirements. And so generally, this this has meant, fairly low density landscape where trees constitute a small portion of the total plant. And so because the community prioritized tree replacement and wanting to maximize the quantity of trees, what we're showing here, we have increased the tree quantity relative to what would be considered a standard Caltrans landscape. And we've done that by reducing the ground cover area and supplementing with hydroseed areas. So the total project budget would stay the same. So consistent with the Community and Environmental Quality Commission's input, the proposed trees will be placed in a naturalized grove-like layout. And this is shown by the green circular symbols to meet the community's preferences for maximizing trees and for the potential for carbon sequestration. We've also identified locations for additional trees, and these are shown by the red circles. But because we're kind of densifying the trees, this would be subject to Caltrans approval because, again, their typical standard landscape is much more kind of spread out and much less dense than what is the community has indicated preference to be. And then ground cover planting areas are shown in the pink hatches, and these are located by the higher visibility on and off ramp areas that are adjacent to Willow Road sidewalk, and so just to help them improve that pedestrian experience. And then lastly, the hydroseed areas are shown by the blue lines, and these would be kind of throughout the tree canopy areas, also in the no tree soil treated zones that I mentioned previously, and then also along those highway setback areas where trees can be planted. So then in addition to the, sorry, one last point on this slide. In addition to the highway interchange planning, there are the 2 trees that Hugh had mentioned that are outside of Caltrans right away, which would also be landscaped. And so, based on community input for the usable park space, the pocket park would have walking paths, irrigated pollinator gardens, and amenities like bench seating. And then at the Bay Road screening, the landscape strip varies fairly significantly in width. And so where there is space, we'd be looking to provide a mixture of native oak trees and screening shrubs. And then where it's very narrow, we are proposing California native brake to be interspersed with the creeping fig that I mentioned previously. And that would help provide for more evergreen backdrop for that wall. All right, next slide. And then so lastly, this perspective just illustrates what the landscape might look like when it's completed. So this location is taken at the southbound on-ramp to Highway 101, and it shows some of the variety of plants, manzanita ground cover in the foreground, sage, and then also the non-irrigated hydroseed in the background. And then you can see in the background some of the mix of conifers and oaks in the background. What's not shown here for kind of graphic clarity and to take a little bit of artistic license are some of the smaller trees that are shown in the plans, which would be clustered around the back of the mound and would help provide for some seasonal color. So yeah, with that, I will hand it back. Thank you.
Thank you, Marie. So just to wrap us up with a couple questions, that we have for council that we want to get direction on. First, we want to talk about what the options are that are available to you to start to consider. So you can see this is kind of a high level summary of costs that we expect for the construction of the landscaping. So it's broken into 3 types of costs. One is the sort of basic construction cost. And then as there are in all projects, there's a contingency for design changes, for things that happen that are unexpected while you're in construction, and for other factors that come into play in any of these types of projects. And then the last column is for the actual cost to do the design work, to develop the construction documents, and then also to a variety of other kind of soft costs that go along with any kind of project. And then in the rows, you have sort of the first top of the table shows you, the sort of basic Caltrans right of way, and I've included the sort of basic hydro seed treatment on the pocket park area, we'll call it, in that cost because that's a relatively small cost. And then the Bay Road screening. And I would just note that for the Bay Road screening, if we are doing an extension of that screening, obviously the cost will also increase as a result, and the additional area is about the same length again as what is proposed in the screening we have there. So it'd be about twice as long, and it doesn't necessarily mean to be exactly twice as much, but it would certainly be more. So then the bottom part of the table shows the cost of that concept to do a pocket park along Willow Road, and that is something that we see as being able to be phased potentially over time. Obviously, the total costs, as you can start to add them up here, do start to exceed, even in the top half of the table, the available 1.6 million from SMCTA. So there's certainly some things that we need to think about. And then, of course, all these costs will be refined and adjusted and updated as we go into the development of construction documents. So then the questions that we have for council really are to get that direction on what we do next with this phase of the project. So part one really is, should we proceed with this Caltrans standard landscape plan that you saw tonight? You saw a version of tonight. That's the tree densification exhibit. So it's a standard plan plus some additional trees. Do you have any direction on the options along Willow Road where we have that potential pocket park? And then is there any interest to potentially contribute city funds to increase the size of the tree, the planted tree? So a certain size is identified as the sort of standard, but you could start with somewhat larger trees if desired, but with, of course, a commensurate increase in cost. And then if we can get direction tonight, we've got a kind of schedule for what we do next. So the summer is really spent coordinating with Caltrans and East Palo Alto on the concept design. And then there's about a year worth, maybe 9 months to complete the construction documents, and then another year to actually install, and then a handful of years for the plants to become established. So those are the requests that we have. And with that, we are happy to take comments and questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Louch and Ms. May, for that presentation. City Clerk Herron, do we have any public comments on this item?
Thank you, Vice Mayor. So at this time, if any member of the public wishes to speak on item E1, provide direction on landscaping at the Willow Road and US 101 interchange, please engage that hand feature in the bottom of your screen. If you're calling in from a landline or a cell phone, please press *9 now. This will be the final call for public comment on our study session item E1. And our first speaker will be Carolyn Ordinance.
Am I unmuted? Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Thanks. I really want to see this plan again. I looked up the Norfolk Island pine. It's not in our zone according to the Sunset Western Garden Book. It uses regular water. You might as well put in a redwood tree. Can we see what these trees and what these shrubs are going to be? I'd like to see another community time to look at it. And this is a real far-fetched idea, but can we adopt a tree? Can people in the community adopt a tree to plant in the island? I didn't see very many trees in that plant. So that's all. I'd like to see it again. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. So this will be the final call for public comment on our study session item E1. And our next speaker will be Mike Schrader.
Hi, I was speaking to you earlier tonight about Mickelson, but having been a 20-year contract employee for a landscaper who's done many highway off ramps and on ramps, I want to commend you on the density and attractiveness of your plan. Caltrans typical standard landscapes are very thin and far spread apart. I used to regularly commute up and down the highway, and I have a medical provider I go to off of Willow. It's a tight, small interchange, but you've done what looks to be an attractive job. I concur with the last speaker, though. I believe you should be careful Redwoods and Norfolk Island pines not only require a lot of water, but they often have to be planted close together, which means more total water because they need the moisture in the air. That's why redwoods go so well on the coast. So while I definitely like the idea of lots of trees to get filled in and the nice ground covers and the way you've done that and the small adjacent parks, also the ornamental figs on the walls, I would be careful about water consumption. And perhaps I didn't see you project the water use other than for cedars and redwoods. Redwoods should be out, pines should be out because they take a lot of water, and the pines, of course, can be shed a lot of debris and so on. But some of the other trees, the cedars are beautiful, and I very much like the plan. It'll look good from the highway, and it'll look good for the users, and hopefully both communities adjacent to the interchange will enjoy it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. So this is the final call for public comment on item E1. Seeing no further hands, Vice Mayor, you may continue.
Thank you, City Clerk Karen, and thank you to Ms. Ordonez and Mr. Schrader. Just goes to show if you come for one thing, you might get interested in the other things we're talking about. So we appreciate your comments. Following up with Mr. Louch and Ms. Mia, can you speak to the water usage of the pine and of how and if you looked at water usage in general going beyond the redwoods?
Thanks for your question, Vice Mayor. I'll actually ask Marie to come on camera and speak to those specific questions.
Yes. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that the slide that I had showed in terms of tree alternatives, that was used as a tool to have a discussion with the community about alternatives to redwood. So since then, we have been looking much more closely at our plant palette and understanding some of the comments that we've been receiving about the kind of priority in wanting to see California natives. We do recognize that we need to shift to using more California natives. So we are not proposing to use the Norfolk pine. We are proposing to use the Atlas cedar and Theodore cedar. I do want to clarify that. So in general, I think most of the plants between the trees and shrubs and the ground cover that we're proposing are going to be low water use. There are a few, again, kind of where there aren't really good alternatives that would be more medium water use, but we're not proposing any that are high water use. And then just last thought there is in terms of kind of determining the water needs, we are looking at what's called WUCALs, which is a little bit more specific in terms of kind of water use. And that's used when we're preparing the irrigation plans to make sure that we're meeting the model water ordinance. And so we are starting to kind of drill down to the details, especially as we get underway into the final design. Right now it is still conceptual. And so just kind of last note would be, a lot of these species selections will be subject to Caltrans input as well.
Thank you. And following up on Mr. Schrader's point about debris, is that a consideration you have in terms of the trees dropping either needles or other items?
Yeah, I think so. That kind of gets back to maintenance. And we have received some preliminary comments from Caltrans, primarily related to pines. They agree and don't support the use of pines, just in terms of litter, but also some concerns about kind of flammability. We've gotten some input related to that. I think there is going to be a bit of a balance, in terms of the goals for kind of sustainability. Kind of leaf litter is eventually, decays into compost and kind of organic material. And so there is going to be a bit of a balance there, but we will be working with Caltrans. Again, they're going to be maintaining this landscape. So whatever gets proposed, they're going to be signing off, and they'll have, I think, pretty specific opinions about what they feel is low maintenance and what they are willing to maintain and what they don't want to see. We'll be getting more of those comments in the future.
Thank you, Ms. May. Two final follow-up questions from Ms. Ordonez, probably more for city staff. One was, are there any thoughts you have about an adopt a tree concept? It does sound like there's limitations to placing additional trees in islands because of the Caltrans restrictions. And then the second question would be, will this be coming back to council? I would imagine if we're awarding a contract, there'll be some plan further down the road. We'll be seeing more detail about the landscaping plan before it's ultimately approved. But if you can elaborate on other opportunities the public may have as this continues to move along.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Wilson. So I know there were some comments, and I believe that some of them came in from Ms. Ordonez about the island at, so she may be talking about the island at Van Buren and Bay that was recently for a totally separate project. And I think we did reference in the staff report that we are planning to plant some additional trees just with sort of regular city available budget in that general location where there was previously a tree. And I think there was a PG&E project that may have led to its removal, but our public works director can get on if I'm misstating any of that. But we did reference that in the staff report, and we are planning to plant some trees there. And I think as you referenced, we're already trying to densify on the interchange area, the tree plantings as much as possible. So there isn't necessarily an opportunity to add additional trees there. And then secondly, yes, I think you're correct that I believe the way this will work is that we will be acting, I think we will likely be acting as the bidding, the city will be bidding out the project eventually, and so certainly would come back to council at that time. We do have to get agreement and coordination with the other party. So Caltrans, and Maria's mentioned this a couple times, the Caltrans has to ultimately approve. And the advantage of the standard landscaping plan is that they do maintain it. If we do have a non-standard plan, that is something that then becomes city responsibility to pay for maintenance. So that is an advantage. And also, the funding partner to make sure that we're all sort of aligned with their procedures. And then we can potentially bring back at a future time to a council meeting, perhaps when we have construction documents. So we can look into that and talk, in the public works division and with the city manager about when the right moment maybe would be to come back with that. But we are really looking for direction to move forward with the next phase of the project in the interest of seeing it advance as quickly as possible into the actual installation of the landscaping.
Thank you, Mr. Louch. And I do see that as Public Works Director, Ms. Nagaya, has her hand raised as an attendee. So City Clerk Karen, you may need to promote her.
Good evening, Vice Mayor, members of the council, Nikki Nagaya, Public Works Director. And since Mr. Louch referenced that I was here, I was just letting City Clerk Karen know where I was in the audience, but I don't have anything to add at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Nagaya. And I think then we are ready for a city council discussion. So I'll open it up to my colleagues. Would anyone like to start the discussion? City Council Member Combs.
Yeah, thank you, Vice Mayor Willison. Can you bring back up the slide where you're looking for council direction? Just to go through that I am supportive of proceeding with the Caltrans or Caltrans standard landscape plan that's been presented. I think I'm supportive of contributing additional city funds to increase tree sizes and also as it relates to extending some of the screening along Bay Road. And what again, we're supportive of the Pocket Park, the Pocket Park. And then what were the other Willow Road options? Just
I think you covered them. Mr. Louch, was there additional guidance you were seeking?
Yes, I think that's correct, that the options really along the Willow Road where the Pocket Park would be is sort of a very basic, hydro seeding, much like the other areas of the interchange. And we've kind of assumed that that would be done because that area has been used as part of the construction of the interchange and for other purposes. So needing to restore that. So we've kind of built that into that sort of first line of base cost. I can go back up here so you can see. So that's in this Caltrans right of way. It also includes that it's an additional, I think, $70,000. So it's a quite small portion of that, but we didn't break that out as a separate item here. So that's what that is. And then the option is to pursue the Pocket Park and think about the timing of that.
Yeah, thanks for that. And I would add that I appreciate that there's lots of issues that need to be balanced. Native, non-native, higher water consumption than others, but I also appreciate the other is the idea of providing screening. And I know as it relates to the southbound Highway 101 sort of on-ramp area that backs up to the that's adjacent to the Willows. There was lots of screening that was lost, and so I appreciate the desire to look to trees that may not quite be native and may have a little bit of a higher water demand as a way of bringing more quickly some of that additional screening that those residents lost as a part of this this project. I'd also add that again, very supportive. I mean, obviously this will come back to, this is a study session, so it'll come back to council. I'm really not supportive of additional and separate outside of a council session, public outreach or engagement. Already on this timeline, we're looking at 5 years between the completion of the sort of on-ramp, off-ramp interchange and the landscaping. I mean, there are freeways that have been completed in 5 years, and it'll take us 5 years just to get this landscaping complete, and that's on this timeline. And so I really am, for me, the priority is to proceed with the least amount of delay as possible. And so again, like I say, this will come before council, and I am happy and encouraging of public comment and engagement as part of council sessions. But I think to sort of go back out and have an open sort of public forum, we would probably be looking at easily 2026 before this project actually was completed.
Thank you, Councilmember Combs. Councilmember Taylor or Councilmember Mueller, Councilmember Taylor.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Willison. I just wanted to add a few things. I am supportive of the project moving forward, and just had a couple questions about the screening. Was there any consideration to provide screening on both sides of the freeway, since there was coverage lost on both sides?
Can I quickly say, Councilmember Taylor, thank you for pointing that out. My apologies that I didn't point that, yes, that the screen coverage was lost on both sides of the freeway. And my apologies that I didn't bring attention to that.
Thank you, Councilmember Taylor. I think I need to look into that, but we absolutely can make sure we look into any place that the screening was lost and look at the level of effort and cost to restore that screening.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And considering the timeline for this project, just, I'm supportive of staying on track for the timeline, but just want to see if there's any option to have screening on both sides, provided maybe within that time frame that you're expected to do the landscaping as well. So I'm not sure what the phasing is, which would happen first. But if there's potential to have the screening happen prior to plants being installed to provide some coverage to residents, if it's possible, that's something that I would be interested in. So thank you. Have a question about the trees. I'm definitely supportive of having increased tree sizes to provide and some city funding to increase that number. So if we can get more trees there for coverage, I don't remember the exact total that was lost with this project, but if we can get close to that number, I would be supportive of that. And then as far as the pocket park, there is a recommendation from Mayor Nash and myself as a part of the subcommittee that would also include funding. So we wanted to do some outreach in August about that, but that is specific to the community amenities list. So it would not be a large outreach. It would just be specifically to District 1. So I just wanted to share that. So if the pocket park is on a timeline, that would have to happen. I don't know, but actually that's the question, Mr. Louch. If the pocket park, do we need to say yes to the pocket park tonight, or is there time? To do follow-up that includes funding for the pocket park?
Yeah, I think if you that can be on a little bit of a separate timeline, because the pocket park essentially sort of layers on top of the standard plan, as I understand it. So I believe that you could come back later and tell us, we want to fund investment in the pocket park, and we could then take that and use that to advance that work. So it doesn't have to happen on the exact same timeline.
Okay, thank you. And then the last item, the Willow Road options. I am supportive of actually, I'm not sure which one I would prefer, but one thing I would like to say about Willow Road, that I suggest that we have some type of enhanced maintenance. There's a lot of debris that's accumulated, especially near the freeway entrances and exits, and then also along Willow between Chester and Newbridge. So just wanted to put that out there if there's any opportunity to have some enhanced maintenance there. And those are all of my comments for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Taylor. Councilmember Mueller?
Can you show me where the pocket park is supposed to be located?
So it's this area here, essentially, is where it's, I don't know if it's visible, but where it says Willow Road Pocket Park. So it's this little kind of, I'm not sure what shape that is, but.
That's great. Okay. Can we go back to the item?
Yes.
Yeah, so I agree with my colleagues. I'll just keep it short and sweet. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Mueller. I appreciate my colleagues' comments. I am completely in alignment with them. With regards to Councilmember Taylor's point about screening on both sides of the freeway and replacing what was taken down, it's my understanding on the Bay Road side, in addition to replacing what was taken down, Mr. Louch, are you also considering extending that screening?
On Bay Road specifically?
Yes.
Yeah, so I think the request is to extend it onto Van Buren. So there's a portion right from the intersection of Bay and Van Buren where if you continue down that that part of the sound wall does not have or it does not currently have screening on it. So we would be looking at that, and we will be looking at that as part of this.
Okay, so yeah, I support Councilmember Taylor's point about kind of however distance or you're looking for on one side to look at that on the other. And then in terms of sequencing, it sounds like it's a possibility that there's things that Caltrans needs, and then the screening might be kind of separate. What we're talking about, the sound walls, that might be city specific. So is it possible, to Councilmember Taylor's point, that that could be done sooner than later, or are you looking to do it all in one go in 2024?
Yeah, I think that's something, thanks, Vice Mayor. I think that's something we can look into, the scheduling of that. A lot of the land, depending where you are, it is still in Caltrans right of way, some of it. So, or is Caltrans owned. So there are, depending what we're looking at, I think we're not necessarily saving ourselves time if we have to coordinate with Caltrans. Where we're more in the city right of way, then we have probably a little bit more flexibility on the timing of that. So it's certainly something we can look into if we can advance any elements faster than the whole.
Thank you, Mr. Louch. Yeah, I think the theme is the sooner the better. And we all remember that weekend, kind of waking up or driving by and seeing those trees gone, and we all miss them. So Mr. Louch, are you seeking any additional feedback, or do you have what you need?
I believe that we have what we need, but I just want to make sure that there isn't any other requests from city manager or from the public works director. I think there might be one or two others.
Thank you, Mr. Louch. So I think just wanted to clarify to the point that Councilmember Taylor was making about increased maintenance and the debris removal. So I think what we can do is, when we come back with information about the status and construction document preparations, we can fold in some information about what increased maintenance might take, and whether at that point we can seek direction from the council about whether that's something you're interested in funding for Caltrans to do, or the city to take over responsibility for that work. But just want to flag, it may be something that's a fairly sizable ask in terms of dollar amount, but we can investigate that further and get some more information together to that point.
Thank you, Ms. Nagaya. And I think, and I have heard from residents before about trash accumulation at the interchange. So just to understand, to have that removed regularly is a additional ask, or is it, can we just pick up the phone and call Caltrans and ask them to come and clean the interchange sooner than later?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think we do that already to put in requests for debris removal, enhanced street sweeping. I shouldn't say enhanced, but just basic street sweeping to remove debris and trash that accumulates along the freeway and the interchanges, as well as clean up in the areas that are landscaped. And apologize, the dog is making noise here. But I think there have been some state programs to provide local agencies access to funding that we can take a look at as well, because I think this is not an issue that's unique to Willow Road or to Menlo Park. So it's something we can take a look at in more detail.
Okay, thank you very much. And while we're on this topic, I have heard reports of a lot of broken glass in the bike lanes on the interchange. So we appreciate the outreach that you are already doing with Caltrans. And it sounds like it's an ongoing thing that you're well aware of. Councilmember Taylor.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Willison. I wanted to take this time to thank the gentleman who was out on Willow Road picking up trash on, I believe it was Saturday afternoon, and whomever he was, I just want to thank him. He had his recycling bin out there and was picking up debris. Just want to say thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Taylor. So with that, I believe we have concluded this agenda item, and we'll be moving on to the consent calendar. Under the consent calendar, the City Council may take action to approve routine business items in one motion unless a council member, city staff member, or a member of the public requests that an item be discussed or continued to a later date. Is there any City Council discussion or questions on the consent calendar? I'm not seeing any. I had already asked that F2 about the quiet zone be pulled. So before we have any discussion about that, City Clerk Herring, can you please call for public comment on the consent calendar?
Thank you, Vice Mayor. So at this time, if any member of the public wishes to speak on our consent calendar item, F1, resolution to continue conducting city council and advisory body meetings remotely. F2, approving a scope of work for the Caltrain Quiet Zone Implementation Plan. F3, receive and file the 2021 Priorities Work Plan Quarterly Update as of June 30th of 2022. Or F4, receive and file the investment portfolio as of March 31st, 2022. Please engage that hand feature in the bottom of your screen. If you're calling in from a landline or a cell phone, please press *9 now. And our first speaker will be Adrian Brandt, followed by Marcia Abramowitz.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to just pass along some information relevant to the quiet zone study. It is the following, that the High-Speed Rail Authority currently has released the final environmental impact statement, environmental impact report for the San Francisco-San Jose section. And it's up for board approval in August, I believe, very soon. And the salient point regarding this agenda item is that the authority is not planning to fund grade separations as part of this EIR and their planned operations. What they are planning to do, however, is investing in safety improvements at all the crossings, including quad gates. And what you might, if you pay attention to the staff report, realize is that there's a happy overlap there with what is required for quiet zones. And indeed, the authority, I did attend some meetings for south of San Jose, and they were speaking to some of the stakeholders in Gilroy and Morgan Hill, and did explain to them that they were fully supportive of and would work with the communities to implement quiet zones. So that's something just to remember. In terms of for Menlo Park, although the authority isn't planning on actually building or constructing any substantial part of the actual operating infrastructure for quite some time, pending funding, I will note that they did advance funding for the electrification. They're paying for about a third of the electrification and system modernization underway. And similarly, I think this is an opportunity for peninsula cities such as Menlo Park, interested in quiet zones, to put a bug in their ear, and anyone with some sway over this, to pull some of that, just a very modest and tiny amount of what they're planning to spend on the San Francisco-San Jose section forward, and help out cities such as yourselves with the necessary safety improvements, the quad gates, and whatever your study that you're contemplating approving tonight will wind up showing. So this is something I think that it's a potentially good win-win nexus. And the authority does have a big pile of money it just got. They've just, as part of the budget deal with Newsom and the legislators, got the remaining $4.2 billion in Prop 1A high-speed rail bond money. And they anticipate getting more from the federal sources. So this is just something that I think is an exciting opportunity, and councils such as yourselves and your staff should be trying to take advantage of, trying to leverage their spending plan. Thanks.
Thank you for your comment. So our next speaker will be Marcia Abramowitz, and this will also be the final call for public comment on our consent calendar items, F1 through F4. And Marcia, I'll ask that you let us know which item you're talking on first.
Hi, good evening. I'm speaking with regard to the quiet zone scope of work as well. And I'm also speaking on behalf of several neighborhood communities, from Park Forest on the northern end to the Caltrain line to Linfield Oaks in the south. And as a group, we want to thank council again for making the exploration of a citywide quiet zone a priority. Sounds from Mr. Brent like this timing could not be better. And we also want to thank staff for preparing the scope of work and for answering some questions from the community offline over the past few days. Overall, we support the hiring of KHA and the scope of work, and we are happy to see the city of Palo Alto participating since the Palo Alto Avenue crossing impacts so many people on both sides of the creek. We just offered two very modest suggestions for consideration. The first is to put in place a process so any significant project delay in Palo Alto doesn't cause an appreciable slowdown of work in Menlo Park. And we understand that adding parties adds complexity, but we just think it would be helpful to have a plan in advance should the situation come up down the line. The second suggestion is that KHA expand their review of recent project costs beyond Northern California to include other parts of the state. The rationale here is to capture a broader sample of quiet zones than have been established to capture a broader sample of quiet zones that have been established on existing rail lines, as opposed to new rail lines such as SMART up in Marin. And we understand from some of the questions we asked earlier that KHA has been involved in several quiet zone projects in the state. So we expect this should be a pretty simple addition for them. So again, we are very grateful to all of you. Making this quiet zone a reality will be transformative. And we're just incredibly excited to get this study going, and also intrigued that there may be opportunities for funding. Thank you all very, very much.
Thank you for your comment. So our final speaker will be Adina Levin. And Adina, if you could let us know which item you're commenting on.
Good evening, Vice Mayor and council members. Adina Levin, Menlo Park resident, speaking about the quiet zone in support of the quiet zone study moving forward, in support of working with Palo Alto on the Palo Alto Avenue. And I do hope that if there is anything that would cause any delay, that would come forward for any kind of decision about mitigating the delay. But I think that since there is interest on both sides of the creek, it's a great thing to work together on. And in the long run, grade separations is a good way to not have to blow train horns. But since we cannot predict how fast a grade separation can be done, and people need to sleep every night and live in their homes every day, having a quiet zone to protect people who live along the corridor is good. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comment. Our next speaker will be Elizabeth McCarthy. And Elizabeth, you can let us know what item you're commenting on.
Good evening. I'd like to make a comment in regards to the quiet zone as well. Just as a longtime Menlo Park resident, I absolutely support this, even though I do not live close to the train tracks in general. I think one of the wonderful benefits of living in Menlo Park is the opportunity to have some peace and quiet in our own homes. And it sounds like this is a safe thing to do, to make this a quiet zone, and it would greatly improve the quality of life of the residents near the tracks. So I just wanted to put my 2 cents out there but let you know that I fully support this, even though I wouldn't be directly impacted. I think it's a wonderful thing to do for our neighbors who live close to the tracks. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Seeing no further hands. Vice Mayor, you may continue.
Thank you, City Clerk Heron. So does somebody want to make a motion to approve the consent calendar without F2? So Councilmember Combs is making that motion, and Councilmember Taylor, are you seconding that?
Yes, second.
Thank you. So I have a motion on the floor by City Council Member Combs and a second by City Council Member Taylor to approve the consent calendar with the exception of item F2. Any further City Council question or discussion? Seeing none, by roll call vote, City Council Member Combs.
Yes.
City Council Member Mueller,
Yes.
City Council Member Taylor,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Willison,
Yes.
and the motion passes with Mayor Nash absent. Thank you.
Thank you, City Clerk Herron. So now we have an opportunity to ask questions and discuss F2, approve scope of work for the Caltrain Quiet Zone Implementation Plan. I had requested to pull this item just to highlight a few things. And I have been going back and forth with city staff and with Ms. Abramowitz. And I do want to thank Mr. Brandt, Ms. Abramowitz, Ms. Levin, and Mccarthy for their comments. So just following up on some of the comments and questions that were raised, city staff, I'm guessing it's going to be Mr. Louch or potentially Public Works Director Nagaya. How will it work with Palo Alto? Can you please let the community know if they're kind of not moving at our pace? Are we able to move without them?
Thanks, Vice Mayor. I'm happy to answer that question. Yeah, the way this is set up is that we'll partner on the study and we'll do some coordinated activities, including some outreach with them. And there'll be a variety of activities that involve sort of the technical parts of the study that'll sort of move in parallel, but have somewhat independent work products because the design of infrastructure at one location will necessarily be different than that at another location. So that we wouldn't necessarily be influenced directly by that. And if for any reason, we had a disagreement or they wanted to move at a slower pace, we can certainly continue our work on without them. I think it's just the opportunity to work with them provides us a variety of advantages, including a little bit lower cost overall for the city, because there's some of those costs that then are shared that then would not be shared. But if there were an issue, we could certainly notify the council about that and look to move forward to make sure we weren't adding any delays to the project.
Thank you, Mr. Louch. And then in terms of Ms. Abramowitz's request to expand the review of project costs throughout California, can you speak to whether Kimley Horn will be doing that? And then how will their cost estimates that they come up with be presented? Will there be just kind of $1 figure, or do you know if it could be broken out by kind of components? Because I understand that different grade separation projects have different unique characteristics depending on location and everything like that. So I think there's a desire in the community to be able to do a little apples and apples comparison, and which can be challenging when there's not that many apples to look at. So just your thoughts on expanding that cost review.
For sure. Yeah, I think that, as Mr. Abramowitz noted, Kimley Horn does have a lot of experience working throughout California on quiet zone projects. They also have national experience from other states. So they are able to bring us a variety of experience, and we will certainly, as we would sort of in any situation, tap into all the knowledge that they have available to us. Certainly, I think you all know California costs tend to be a little bit higher, and they're higher for a variety of sort of well-known reasons that we don't need to get into tonight. So we'll probably focus mostly on California for comparable costs, but we can look at some of their experience in Los Angeles or San Diego or elsewhere to make sure that we get a variety of costs. And then in terms of how the costs are presented, we haven't worked that out yet, is the honest truth, but typical for a study like this is to get, we're going to be doing concept design. So it'll be a little bit high level, but we will understand the kind of components that go into each grade crossing, because essentially we need to know what is going to be the required set of infrastructure that's needed at each location. And it is going to vary by location because the locations themselves are distinct. Some have full medians like Ravenswood, others have, recently upgraded, but a different kind of median. Some of them have street access points, that are quite nearby, others don't. So, that changes what we need to do. So we'll have a pretty good understanding sort of by the kind of necessary components, and it'll be easy to, I think, understand what those costs are, at a reasonably granular level, but recognizing also that those costs are very much estimates at this stage, and then you have to go into sort of final design, much like the prior agenda item we were discussing, where you kind of work out what are all the actual specific costs when you do those design plans. So keeping that in mind, we should be able to get the community the kind of information they're looking for.
Thank you, Mr. Louch. And following up on Mr. Brandt in terms of hearing about high-speed rail and their environmental impact and potential opportunity to secure funding from that bucket, is there anything staff can be doing to help pursue that or advocate for that?
Yeah, thanks, Vice Mayor. So we certainly are aware that the high-speed rail has identified, and this has been in their plans for a little while, but the final EIR would seem to confirm that they want to put up, basically create the conditions at each grade crossing in the entire peninsula that would allow for a quiet zone, which is great. I think the other thing that he did mention is that we don't know when the funding for that would become available to us. I think that advancing funding, it will be a probably significantly political conversation, would be my guess. Not necessarily directly involved. We will certainly are more than happy as staff to advocate for that and to explore any paths that we might have for moving some of that funding forward. We could potentially have an opportunity to do it the other way, where we make infrastructure investments that then become, we get sort of acknowledgement that they will be reimbursed. That has happened on other types of projects. We can't guarantee that either, but those are the kinds of things that certainly as staff, we can look into what the opportunities are. And then the last thing I would say about that's important to know is that there are the paths to a quiet zone, like put the 4 quadrant gates up that are sort of written into what FRA, if you have those, you get to have a quiet zone. You have to go through the process, but it's a sort of, that's all you need essentially. And then there are other paths. There could also be the potential, and as we think about this overall study, we can investigate if it makes sense for us to do a lower level effort in the short term that gets us to a quiet zone that maybe it wouldn't hold as traffic volumes increase and train volumes increase, but would get us to the point where high-speed rail might be making an investment. So there are different sort of implementation pathways we'll explore, and certainly as staff, and I think as we work with our consultant, we're going to want to think about all of those things and recommend for the city what the most efficient use of resources is, and however we can draw in additional resources, we are certainly going to be looking to do that.
That's wonderful that you're juggling all these considerations, and we'll be discussing these as the study moves forward. And then finally, how long, I've had some questions, how long will it take to conclude this study? What's the timeline?
Yeah, thank you for that. It's a great question. I think we had said when we released the RFP, approximately a year, and I think that seems doable. Our objective is to move it forward as quickly as possible, and I think the primary constraints really are just all the other things that are going on, and obviously having to schedule around the various meetings, the public meetings, and the council meetings. The Complete Streets Commission is also slated to receive presentations, so wanted to fit all of those things in a time that works for everyone. And of course, sometimes council agendas can be very busy, but so I think we imagine sort of a year, maybe 15 months if we get scheduling difficulties or if there are any other kinds of issues, but I feel like we'll be able to make substantial progress in a year and have a very clear path forward at that point.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Mr. Louch. Any other comments or questions from my colleagues on this item? If not, I will move then to approve the scope of work of the Caltrain Quiet Zone Implementation Plan. Is there a second? Councilmember Combs just seconded.
Thank you. So I have a motion on the floor by Vice Mayor Willison and a second by City Council Member Combs to approve the scope of work for the Quiet Zone Implementation Plan. Any further City Council question or discussion? Seeing none, by roll call vote, City Council Member Combs,
Yes.
City Council Member Mueller,
Yes.
City Council Member Taylor,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Willison,
Yes.
and the motion passes with Mayor Nash absent.
Thank you, City Clerk Herron. We are now moving on to regular business. Under regular business, the City Council considers recommendations from city staff on policy matters or administrative actions that require City Council approval. The first regular business item is G1, appointment of Justin Murphy as City Manager and approval of compensation for City Manager services. To introduce the item is legal counsel Genevieve Ng.
Good evening, Vice Mayor, members of the City Council, city staff members, and members of the public. My item this evening for your consideration is the employment agreement for the city manager. I would like to add a slight amendment to the language of the agreement that's attached to the agenda. The language that I would like to add is at the start of the sentence in section 8. And the language that we wish to add is the following. To the extent required by the municipal code and/or city council, Murphy shall secure, and then it goes on to the rest of the paragraph. Otherwise, I'd like to just do a really quick presentation on a high-level summary of the significant terms of the employment agreement for the city manager. The first item is that the initial term is for 3 years with a 2-year option. The starting salary is $275,000 per year, and there are increases in the employment agreement for increases each year of the 3-year term. There's no provision for a COLA or CPI increase outside of these fixed dollar amount increases. There's a signing bonus of $10,000. And the city manager's benefits will be aligned with the city management benefit plan for management appointees. Otherwise, the employment agreement was attached to the agenda, so you've had a chance to review. So please let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you, legal counsel Ng. City Clerk Herron, can you please call for public comment on this item?
Yes, thank you, Vice Mayor. So at this time, if any member of the public wishes to provide comment on item G1, appointment of Justin Murphy as city manager and approval of compensation for city manager services, please engage that hand feature in the bottom of your screen. If you're calling in from a landline or a cell phone, please press *9 now. And our first speaker will be Karen Grove.
Good evening. I am a resident of Menlo Park, and I just want, and a longtime advocate and attendee of these meetings. And I just wanted to say congratulations and thank you. And I am particularly taken by the fact that City Manager Murphy has been with the city since he was an associate planner. And so, you know, has a lot of hats that he's worn along the way, and I look forward to him leading us into the future. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Any further public comment on item G1? Seeing none, Vice Mayor, you may continue.
Thank you, City Clerk Herron. I will now open this item for council discussion. Does anyone have any comments?
My comment is I move.
As Councilmember Combs, you're making the motion to approve. Okay. Is there a second? Councilmember Taylor, I see your hand raised.
I'll second.
Great.
Thank you. So I have a motion on the floor by City Council Member Combs and a second by City Council Member Taylor to appoint Justin Murphy as city manager and approve compensation for city manager services. Any further city council question or discussion?
Thank you, City Clerk Herron. I just wanted to congratulate Mr. Murphy on this appointment. He has the utmost integrity, confidence from city staff and from council. I think he's a very fair, competent, and has such heart for Menlo Park. And so I think this is a huge win for our city. And I'm delighted that we are moving forward with Mr. Murphy as our city manager. I was going to bring cupcakes, but Mr. Murphy's wasn't able to be in council chambers this evening. But at some point, we'll have a proper celebration. Congratulations, Mr. Murphy. Any other comments from my colleagues?
Just excited for Justin. So I go back. I was today having lunch with the former mayor of Menlo Park, who was mayor, way back in the early 90s, late 80s, and he remembered Justin as that time of being with the city, and the history and the number of people who I've talked to who have worked with him over the years and are excited for him. It's just really heartwarming to see and really exciting for the city. So well-deserved, well-earned, and really, really looking forward to seeing him take up that mantle.
Thank you, Councilmember Mueller. I did run into our fire marshal today, just bumped into him. And he expressed how excited he is to be able to work with Justin in this capacity, Mr. Murphy, excuse me, in this capacity. Well, I think I just speak for all of us. I know Mayor Nash was disappointed she couldn't be here, but she is fully in support. And Ms. Herron, will you please call for the vote?
Yes, thank you. So by roll call vote, City Council Member Combs,
Yes.
City Council Member Mueller,
Yes.
City Council Member Taylor,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Willison,
Yes.
and the motion passes with Mayor Nash absent.
All right, we are moving on to G2, which is our final regular business item. Waive the first reading and introduce an ordinance amending Title 8, Peace, Safety, and Morals of the Municipal Code to create a comprehensive permitting system for public assemblies, events, and use of city parks and facilities. To introduce this item, we have City Clerk Herron.
Thank you, Vice Mayor and City Council members. I'm Judy Herron, your City Clerk. The item before you this evening is the first reading and introduction of an ordinance repealing, amending, and adding to the city's municipal code related to permits regulating gatherings in the city of Menlo Park. There are 4 types of permits regulating gatherings in the city. The first is a special events permit. This type of permit is largely targeted at large gatherings, including certain expressive activity on city public property, not including public parks in most instances. Expressive activity means conduct, the sole or principal object of which is the expression of opinion, views, or ideas protected by the First Amendment. The second type of permit is a park permit. This is the permit to be issued for non-expressive activities in the city of Menlo Parks. The third is a noise permit. This permit is for events which may exceed the city's noise limitations, but which are not considered special events, expressive activities, or which are not in the parks. Examples of these would be weddings, graduation parties, birthday parties. The fourth permit type is a film permit, and this is for filming activity on public or private property, not including news, small operations, still photography, or city-produced government access films. I would like to note that the film permit will be coming to City Council for a first reading on their July 26th meeting. The city's new event permitting scheme takes special care to observe the First Amendment rights of people to conduct protected express activity. I'm going to go into a bit more detail on the 4 permit types I just provided an overview on. So for special event permits, there's 3 instances where a special event permit is required. One is the formations, parades, demonstrations on city streets, or in the city's right-of-way. An example would be a Little League parade. The second is an organized assembly of over 150 people on public property. Now, this does include expressive activity and non-expressive activity. Expressive activity includes conduct such as speeches, protests, marches, in expressing opinions, views, or ideas, or the distribution of political or religious literature. Expressive activity does not include conduct such as Little League parades, city-sponsored gatherings, or private social gatherings, birthday parties, graduation parties. A special events permit is required for expressive activity only when, 1, expressive activity is being conducted on a public street, right-of-way, or park, and there will be more than 150 people present. The third instance where a special event permit is required is any other organized activity conducted by a person for a common use, purpose, or benefit, which will require public services for street closures, erecting barriers, traffic control, or that will otherwise interfere with the normal use and operations of public right-of-ways for vehicular traffic. Next, I'm going to cover the examples that do not require a special event permit. So the first one would be expressive activity conducted on private property, as long as it doesn't require public services. Number two, expressive activity involving fewer than 150 people. An example where expressive activity does not require a permit is up to 150 people around the city passing out political or religious pamphlets, up to 150 people marching on a public street, sidewalk, or in the right of way in favor or in opposition to a policy, or gatherings of up to 150 people showing support or opposition to a policy. Next instance where a special permit is not required is activities on school grounds and spontaneous events generated by breaking news on city property if all of the following are true. So the news generated, the gathering must have come into the public knowledge less than 48 hours before the gathering. Organizers provide the police chief or designee at least 4 hours of prior notice, and the location where the spontaneous event will be held has not already been rented, reserved, or obligated to another use. An example of a spontaneous event are celebrations on the street after a sports team victory, or spontaneous protest or march immediately following breaking news. And then the final instance where a special permit is not required is the filming pursuant to the film ordinance. And as I mentioned earlier, your film ordinance will be coming to you on July 26th. And lastly, with special event permits, there is a no noise permit under Chapter 8.06 of the Municipal Code required for special events. However, special events should explicitly state whether the event may exceed the noise limitations, and the Chapter 8.06.050E exempts special events from the noise permit requirement so long as the special event permit specifically allows noise levels to be exceeded. Next, I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about park permits. So park permits are required for exclusive use of any park or any area of a park for a group of any size. The use of an area of a park for a group of more than 150 people, or activities in a park less than 1 acre by a group of more than 20 people. However, Camp Fremont Park is exempt from this requirement of the 20 people or more, because a permit is required at Camp Fremont for exclusive use of it or use of it by a group of more than 75 people. Instances where a park permit is not required is expressive activity. If the permit requested is for expressive activity as defined, then the special event permit requirements will govern. And no park permit is required for the use of any area of a park by less than 150 people. There are capacity limitations, and in general, it's 1 person per 200 square feet of usable open area. However, Burgess Park has a maximum of 1,400 people, and Kelly Park has a maximum of 900 people. Also, a noise permit is required if it is required under Chapter 8.06. Next is a noise permit, and a noise permit is required where the event takes place on private property and is not otherwise governed by the special events ordinance. Examples would be birthdays, graduations, and weddings. These are granted by the Community Development Director or designee. And finally, the film permit, which again is scheduled for July 26th, and it is required for use of public or private property. The exceptions for the film permit, if the activities are a small operation, and a small operation is a filming activity of fewer than 10 persons, does not require the closure of any city streets, sidewalks, or public property, does not obstruct free passage of pedestrians or vehicles, does not involve drones, does not involve pyrotechnics, simulated or actual gunfire, and non-domesticated animals, and does not require the use of any city resources. Also exempt from the film permit are news media operations, filming activities conducted at a studio, which is defined as a fixed place of business, still photography, and city-produced government access films. And my final slide is impacts on city resources. The proposed ordinance updates the Menlo Park Municipal Code, allowing for the police chief or designee to issue special event permits, and the library and community services director or their designee to issue permits for exclusive use of city parks, and the community development director or designee to issue noise permits. The city will need to update ACELA, which is the city's permitting system, infrastructure, and coordinate enforcement as needed with the police department. And so that does conclude my presentation, and I'm happy to answer any clarifying questions or go to public comment.
Thank you, City Clerk Karen. Can you now please call for public comment on this item?
Thank you, Vice Mayor. So at this time, if any member of the public wishes to speak on item G2, waive the first reading and introduce an ordinance amending Title 8, Peace, Safety, and Morals of the Municipal Code to create a comprehensive permitting system for public assemblies, events, and use of city parks and facilities, please engage that hand feature in the bottom of your screen. If you're calling in from a landline or a cell phone, please press *9 now. And our first speaker will be Adina Levin.
Good evening, Vice Mayor and council members. I had no predetermined intention to speak on this item. I just had the recording still up in the background, but in listening to this, there were a couple of things about the filming permit that either I don't understand or might potentially have unintended consequences by being more sweeping than current technology has made common. And one example is something where with community groups and nonprofits that have gatherings at, for example, a public park, and might film something that somebody says for the purposes of other people that are interested in that activity. And another example, which has become really common in the last few years, is the use of services like TikTok, where people will film some like 2-minute video and share it on the internet. And I suspect that the city council is expecting needing permits for filming a movie, and not for a community group, like having a phone video of somebody giving a short talk or having somebody do a TikTok. And I think we probably don't want to be involved in enforcing of such things. So if that would be included, it would be great to not include them, because I don't think they're intended. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. This will be the final call for public comment on our regular business item G2. Seeing no further hands, Vice Mayor, you may continue.
Thank you, City Clerk Karen. City Clerk Karen, can you speak to Ms. Levin's concerns or someone on staff? And then you had mentioned that the filming would be coming back to us. So are we approving something related to that, or is this something staff can consider prior to the filming discussion we'll be having?
Correct. Yeah. So we have taken in Adina's comments, and yes, we don't have the film permitting ordinance before you yet. It will be coming up on the 26th. I did just want to clarify that the film permit exception is for smaller operations, groups under 10. If you're not using any city services, you're not closing any city streets, things like that. But again, we did, the city attorney and I have taken notes, and we'll add those considerations when we bring this back on the 26th.
Thank you very much, Ms. Herron, and thank you, Ms. Levin, for pointing those things out. So is there any city council discussion, or does somebody want to make a motion?
Yeah, so I have a question for staff as it relates to the noise permit. Recently, there has been an issue in connection with an eating establishment in our community that has taken or made use of its outdoor area for live music a couple of nights a week. And there has been at least one complaint in connection with that live music exceeding the city's noise ordinance. And so does this noise permitting process, would it allow a scenario in which that establishment or any establishment could get a permit and then be allowed to exceed the noise ordinance decibel limits?
Thank
Or
you,
would that-
Councilmember
would that be
Combs. And
something
I'm
separate.
Yeah, I'm going to turn this one over to our city attorney. Appreciate that.
Thank you, City Clerk Karen and Councilmember Combs. Yes, the answer is yes. The noise permit ordinance and the portions of it which are not being revised or impacted by the minor changes to the noise ordinance before you this evening, they would allow activities like that, subject to, in certain instances, a use permit. And in some instances, issuance of a permit by the community development director. The city manager and I have discussed the outdoor music that I believe you're speaking of, and we do think that there is the opportunity for some additional revisions to the noise ordinance to make the permitting process a bit more streamlined for outdoor music, such as small events at cafes on a weekly basis in the early evening or afternoon hours. And I will defer to the city manager on this, but the staff is anticipating bringing back to the city council in the fall a more robust sidewalk dining program. And so the city manager and I agreed that it might be appropriate to bring such revisions to the noise ordinance at that time, because they're both related to outdoor music, outdoor entertainment, and restaurant usage of outdoor space. And so it would sort of make sense to look at those comprehensively and together.
Thank you, City Attorney Doherty. No additional questions from me. I do recognize that there seems to be a hand went up in the public seemingly in response to that line of questioning. So I will defer to the Vice Mayor if she would be willing to open up that public comment again, because maybe there wasn't it wasn't clear that the line of questioning would go in that direction. But again, I defer to the Vice Mayor. That's it for my questions.
Thank you, Councilmember Combs. Ms. Herron, will you please reopen public comment on this item?
Yes, thank you, Vice Mayor. So at this time, we're reopening public comment for item G2. And our next speaker will be Elizabeth McCarthy.
Hi, good evening. I am one of the neighbors whose home faces Cafe Zoe on Minalto, and I know we're all talking about Cafe Zoe on Minalto. City Council should just be aware that there will be robust opposition to this permit application by the residents of the homes that face Cafe Zoe. We're all in agreement as residents that this block is not at all appropriate for an outdoor amplified concert venue. There simply isn't, it's not this property was never intended to be an outdoor concert venue. This is a primarily residential block. And for example, during her outdoor concerts, the noise level within my home exceeds 80 decibels, which is the equivalent of a gas-powered lawnmower. If I get a phone call during these outdoor concerts, I have to take the call in my bathroom with the door shut so that the person can hear me on the phone. You know, I really hope that City Council will work with integrity and fairness to the residents that face this business. I know the owner is a beloved member of the community, and she has a lot of personal relationships with the City Council, but I have been a Willows resident for 35 years, and my neighbors and I that face this property, we are not going to stand for it anymore. She's been operating as an outdoor concert venue for the past year without a permit. And like I said, during this last year, it's been absolutely intolerable as a resident. I've lived here long before she was ever in business, and I plan to live here long after she's closed up her business. And frankly, my neighbors and I, we are done putting up with this, because it's really infringing on our right to peaceful existence in our own homes.
Thank you for your comment. So this will be the final call for public comment on agenda item G2. Seeing no further hands, Vice Mayor, you may continue.
Thank you. Is there any additional discussion? First of all, thank you, Ms. McCarthy, for your comment. Is there any additional council discussion on this item? Or would anyone like to make a motion?
I'll also thank Ms. McCarthy for her comment. I'll move, but also acknowledging that in moving this broader policy and ordinance change, we're in no way sort of directly addressing the issue that Ms. McCarthy raised, or in any way negating any options that are available to her to make sure she's heard with that regard. So just want to make it clear. My line of questioning was about the possibility that there could be an avenue in this, and the city attorney said that it was something that her and the city manager are exploring, but our action today doesn't it directly address that. And so I just want to be very, very clear to Ms. McCarthy on that. I've heard you. Obviously, I heard you when I sat in your living room. I heard you tonight, and I think the council has heard you, and we know that this is an issue that will require a lot more discussion. But I move. I'm sorry, I did move.
Okay, thank you for your clarification, Councilmember Combs, and for your motion. Is there a second? Councilmember Taylor.
I'll second.
Thank you. So I have a motion on the floor by City Council Member Combs and a second by City Council Member Taylor to waive the first reading and introduce an ordinance amending section 8.06.050 and 8.06.060 of chapter 8.06 of Title 8 of the Menlo Park Municipal Code, repealing section 8.06.065 of chapter 8.06 of Title 8 of the Menlo Park Municipal Code, amending section 8.06.070 of chapter 8.06 of Title 8 of the Menlo Park Municipal Code, amending section 8.16.8 of the Menlo Park Municipal Code, and repealing and replacing chapter 8.28 of Title 8 of the Menlo Park Municipal Code. Any further city council question or discussion?
Can you repeat that? Just kidding.
Seeing no further questions, by roll call vote, City Council Member Combs.
Yes.
City Council Member Mueller.
Yes.
City Council Member Taylor.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Willison.
Yes.
And the motion passes with Mayor Nash absent. Thank you.
Thank you, City Clerk Herron. We are now moving on to informational items. Informational items are transmitted to the City Council in staff's effort to provide an update on matters of importance to the City Council. Informational items are not action items. However, a City Council member, city staff member, or a member of the public may request to make a comment or ask a question on any of the informational items. City Clerk Karen, do we have any public comments on the informational items?
Thank you, Vice Mayor. So at this time, if any member of the public wishes to speak on our informational item H1, City Council agenda topics, or H2, Personnel Activity Report as of June 30th, 2022, please engage that hand feature in the bottom of your screen. If you're calling in from a landline or a cell phone, please press *9 now. Final call for public comment on our informational items H1 and H2. Seeing no hands, Vice Mayor, you may continue.
Thank you, City Clerk Karen. Are there any City Council questions on the informational items? Councilmember Mueller.
I just had left it on before. No, I do have an item on for council member reports, but nothing on the informational items.
Thank you. It looks like there are no other additional questions on the informational items. So we are going to move on to City Manager's report. And I am pleased for the first time to introduce City Manager Justin Murphy.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Willison and City Council. I had truly hoped to be there with you in the council chambers this evening, but that was not in the cards for me this evening. So I am participating remotely. I do look forward to the opportunity for enjoying and sharing with cupcakes. So I would just like to start and express my appreciation and thanks in the City Council entrusting me to serve as the city's next city manager. I just want to reflect back a little bit in terms of, the various levels of support that I've had over the years with my my family, my extended family, my immediate family. They are my rocks that help keep me going. I've had the benefit of meeting a vast number of community members over the years, and the reactions that a number of them have had regarding the City Council's announcement just a little under a month ago has really impacted me. So I'm very grateful for that community support. I also want to reflect on number of city employees, past, present, and future. There's been a number of people over the years that have looked out for me both professionally and personally, and I appreciate that. I appreciate the learning that new employees help colleagues offer to me, and I look forward to future employees joining the organization as well. There's a number of dedicated people, and really appreciate everyone's work. And finally, I just want to express my thanks and gratitude to the City Council. I've really appreciated getting to know you all better over the past 6 months, and I'm very optimistic about what the future holds for all of us working collectively to improve the city of Menlo Park and adapt to change in the future. So again, extremely humbled, grateful, appreciative of everything, and looking forward to the future. So thank you all for that. And then I do have a few of the more routine updates to provide as well, but this is actually the exciting part. So there's been a few grant and funding opportunities that the city has been pursuing, and some of our adjacent communities have been pursuing. So the city, have learned recently that the San Mateo County Transportation Authority has approved the city's grant request for funding to improve the pedestrian crossings of El Camino Real. So I think there's one more action by the Transportation Authority board on that, but we're looking forward to grateful to for that project to have funding and be able to move forward. There's also the town of Atherton pursued an MTC pass grant to coordinate the traffic signals on Middlefield Road. And as part of that, that will include 2 traffic signals in the city of Menlo Park at Ravenswood and Ringwood. So we're thankful to MTC and Atherton, look forward to coordinating with them for that improvement. And then the largest dollar amount, and it still potentially has a couple more steps, but is related to the undercrossing of the railroad tracks at Middle Avenue. Congressperson Eshoo did identify funding that would be eligible for that project, up to $4 million. There's a couple more steps through the congressional process, but that's looking promising. So we do want to extend our thanks to the congressperson for identifying that project for that funding. So a couple more steps to actually secure it, but that's will help bring that project to reality. So those are some exciting news on some grant opportunities, funding opportunities for transportation projects. And then I also wanted to highlight the upcoming summer concert series that starts tomorrow night. We have a series of eight concerts. 6 of them will be located at Fremont Park, and then 2 of them at Bellhaven School. So looking forward to being able to have some opportunity for community gathering and enjoyment, being able to reactivate that summer concert series that we've missed in some recent years, but exciting that that's available to us again this summer. So that concludes my reports for this evening. And again, thank you all for your support.
Well, thank you, City Manager Murphy, for that great news about all those grants, and excited about the summer concert series, but most of all, for your heartfelt words. And I think for anyone who just heard what you said, it just reinforces your love of Menlo Park and our city staff, and what a great fit you are going to be in this role. So I know it was a unanimous vote on this council, so that says a lot, and we're all really looking forward to working with you. So congratulations again to you and your family. Thank you. Okay, we are moving on to city council member reports. So any reports from city council members since the June 28th council meeting? I believe Council Member Mueller.
Yeah, so I have an agenda request. When we passed way back a few weeks back, we looked at Block Power in the city and passed a partnership agreement between the city and Block Power to go ahead and bring clean energy retrofits to Menlo Park homes. Don't want to change the substance of that, but since that time, within the resolution that evening, it indicated that what we would be seeking would be good paying jobs for the community. And since that time, it's come to my attention that we really haven't set forth what that means. And it really hasn't been set forth yet by Block Power or by stakeholders what that means. So what I'd like to do is bring back the agreement, but add an amendment to the agreement that indicates that the expectation that prevailing wage will be used for those contracts that are associated with Block Power at a minimum. And so looking to see if I can get a second on council to go ahead and bring that forward for the council to go ahead and examine at a future council meeting. So this is an agenda request item.
City Manager Murphy or someone on staff, can you please remind me the process of this agenda request?
let's see, so as the terms of agenda planning, that's at the coordination between the city manager and the mayor. So if the council member Mueller is making that request this evening, we can take that under advisement.
No,
yeah.
Respectfully, City Manager Murphy, there's a secondary process where during council member reports, a council member can make a motion, and then with a second, that can be put into process to be set at a later date.
Okay, I apologize. I don't have that readily in front of me. So
I understand. And I apologize for interrupting you, but I do know that policy very well because I've had to use it over the course of the last decade.
Great.
I'd like to ask a clarifying question. Is this something that is a matter that we could just ask Block Power what their?
We have, and they've said that they have not clarified that they were going to use prevailing wage. I have asked them already, and they have been asked actually by labor already, and they've said, well, we're going to set labor standards later. And I think it should be something that's actually part of the agreement between the city and Block Power. So I'm asking for an amendment to that agreement to add to it.
And just so I would understand, Councilmember Mueller, so this is where you're seeking a second.
I'm just seeking a second so the council can examine it at a later meeting.
And to clarify, Mr. Murphy, a second then would bring it back with a sense of what the resource implications would be to the request.
We'd have to vote on the amendment we'd have to vote on it, yes, at a later date. So there would be a city staff report prepared with an agenda item. And then the council would vote whether or not they were going to instruct staff to prepare the amendment.
Through the vice mayor.
Yes, City Attorney Doherty.
I am now looking at the city council's procedures manual, and I do think that they echo what Councilmember Mueller just articulated, which is that, and I can read in part what I believe he's referencing, a council member may request an item be considered on a future agenda, and upon agreement of a majority of the council, staff will prepare a staff report if formal city council action is required. Council members may make this request verbally during a meeting. Normally, the process involves 2 steps. Initial consideration of the request by the full city council at the soonest possible regularly scheduled meeting, and if the majority agrees, the matter is then scheduled for further consideration on an upcoming meeting. So I do think Councilmember Mueller is correct that staff would then bring this back at the, I think it's as soonest possible regularly scheduled meeting for a vote on whether or not staff will undertake the revisions to the resolution of support and return with that a revised resolution.
So by seconding it, it then comes back to the full city council to decide whether to have staff work on it, or is seconding it having staff work on it?
So
yeah, so these protocols don't actually say a second is even required. But I think Councilmember Mueller, it sounds like you're asking for a second, and that seems sensible. And so,
right, if I don't have a second, there's no point. If someone else, usually with the standard practice over the years has been, you bring it at council member reports. If you get a second, gets on the agenda for council consideration at a later date.
Yeah, I'm certainly willing to second it if seconding it means it comes back and then the council decides whether or not to allocate resources and time to explore that item. So if that's my interpretation of it, then I'm happy to second that.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
and I do agree with your interpretation, Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Mueller and City Attorney Doherty and City Manager Murphy. Are there any additional council member reports?
So yeah, so I just again want to extend my congratulations to the city manager. You know, 27 years is a long time. Was I even born then when you started with the city? So there's a lot of commitment to one place, and I think we're all excited to see a scenario when someone has committed to an organization or entity their professional product for so long to sort of rise to one of the senior or if not the most senior position in that organization. So I wholeheartedly extend my congratulations. I would also like to echo your call out of the restart of the summer concert series, and I would encourage everyone who is available to be there. My family and I will be there. I'm really excited to see this is another sort of linchpin of the community activities that the city has historically offered. Return, we didn't quite make it with the 4th of July parade this year, but hopefully next year definitely it'll be back. But really excited that tomorrow night the summer concert series will start, and so certainly hats off to everyone on staff who made it happen.
Thank you, Councilmember Combs. Councilmember Taylor, did you have any reports you'd like to give?
No, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Taylor. Then I believe we will adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everyone. Good night.